There we go. Rick said he didn't have any announcements. We need a couple of folks for prayers. Need somebody for an opening prayer. Any volunteers? I'll do the opening prayer. Oh, Larry, you want to do the opening? And I'll do the closing. Or you want to do the closing? Okay. All right. Larry, if you'll do the opening, I'll do the closing. We're going to go old school tonight because somebody left their phone at church this morning and didn't have a way to text you in what the songs were. So, number 484 will be our first song. 484.
You are my strength when I am weak. You are the treasure that I seek. You are my all in all. Seeking you as a precious jewel, for to give up might be a fool. You are my all in all. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Take my sin, my cross, my shame, rise again, I bless your name. You are my all in all. When I'm old and you pick me up, when I am dry, you fill my cup. You are my all in all. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name.
Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for this evening, the opportunity of being here, another look into your word. We want to thank you for the songs that we sing to your precious name, to the name of Jesus. That we can draw encouragement from those words, be in a better frame of mind to worship you. We give you thanks for many things in this life, for the country we have to live in, for the community here, for the church that lives for the purpose in this place, meets here. We thank you for your children worldwide who are meeting at this particular time of the evening. Help us realize, Heavenly Father, that there are many scattered throughout the world, so we're not alone. We thank you for this series of the life of Christ that we are studying. Pray that you would help us all to pray for his efforts, participate in the teaching, and if we miss the mark, that we would obey what he tells us. When we see it is your holy word, continue to pray for those who have difficulties in their life, needs of health needs. We pray for those doctors that are administering to them, if they will find just those things that will give them speedy recovery to the help. If not, help us to realize that your will be done in all things. Help us to accept your will. With us through the further exercises of this time. Forgive us where we fail you. Help us always be willing to repent of our sins. Know that you will forgive. Continue with us now. When you see leads us in these songs. Be with Jim as he brings the lesson. Continue to bless us. Be merciful to us. Thank you for your love and your grace. Just give us someone to lean upon in the day. Comfort us. We ask in Jesus' name.
Next song is number 453. 453.
I'm sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore. Buried deep, stained within, seeking to rise no more. But the Master of the sea heard my despairing cry. From the waters lifted me, now safe am I. Love lifted me, love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me. All my heart to Him I give, ever to Him I cling. In His blessed presence live, ever His praises sing. Love so mighty and so true, bears my soul's best songs. Faithful love in service to Him belongs. Love lifted me, love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me. Souls in danger, look no up, Jesus completely saves. He will lift you by His love out of the angry waves. He's the Master of the sea, builds His will obey. He, your Savior, wants to be saved today. Love lifted me, love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me. Looks like Mark is almost another.
Excuse me, 947. 947. 947. Get the invitation song. Song before the lesson is 469. 469.
You can't go on the hills of light, ye Christian soldiers rise, and rest the battle ere the night shall veil the glowing skies. Against the foe in the field, let all our strength be hurled. Faith is the victory we know, that overcomes the world. Faith is the victory. Faith is the victory. Glorious victory that overcomes the world. His banner over us is love, our sword, the word of God. We tread the road the saints above, with shouts of triumph trod. By faith they like a whirlwind thread, swept on o'er every field. The faith by which they conquered death is still our shining shield. Faith is the victory. Faith is the victory. Glorious victory that overcomes the world. To him that overcomes the world, thy reign shall begin. Before the angels he shall learn his name confessed in heaven. Then onward from the hills of light, our hearts with love aflame, we'll vanquish all the hosts of night in Jesus' conquering name. Faith is the victory. Faith is the victory. Glorious victory that overcomes the world.
Good evening. Everybody you should have 2 sheets of assignments. There's not much on them. Don't worry about that. It is good to be here. It was another good day this morning. Had visitors, and that's always a good thing. Had starting to have more and more kids, and it's almost kind of like the Kevin Costner baseball movie. Build it, they'll come. You have the classes ready, kids will eventually come. And so sometimes we lose heart, but that is just a thing that we persevere and it works out. The first congregation I started full time at, started there, and they had gotten down smaller than what we are even now, and worked with them to try to do things. And as I was there, I discovered, it's like, well, what about kids? I said, well, we don't really have a lot of kids now. I said, well, what are your plans when you have kids show up? Well, we don't really have any. I said, well, you need to have plans. I said, so what about if you get some babies? And of course, we had a little, wasn't a little child, but yeah, we had some. And then I knew some people that we was looking at coming and starting to talk to and everything. And I said, so if we have, nursery age kids or toddlers, do we have anything for them? Guy looked at me and said, well, we used to have one of them things, where you can put them in the chairs and do that. Said, we sold it last year. I said, so luckily I went to back when the days when Gospel Advocate had a store, and they had one on clearance. So we got one of them, and it was funny. We got one, and then it was like 2 or 3 weeks it was full. I mean, we probably could have used a bigger one. And so it just, it's funny how it works out. If you don't plan for things to grow, then they typically won't. But you've got to have the mechanisms to handle that. And so a lot of good things are going on. The lock-in, I'm kind of excited about that. Not had one in a while. I probably will not feel the same come Saturday morning, May the 28th. But right now I'm excited about it, and we'll see how it goes. Kids are excited. Kids get excited about the smallest things, and so they are very excited, and so we are looking forward to it. This life of Christ, and our goal is in 3 weeks now, we want to try to invite people to come here. And I've talked to some about people that would be good to invite for this. And basically, it works either way. A lot of times we have those that, and they may even have seen, I was talking to Larry, I think, about many of those on the Joy Bus age with the kids there and how they were such a tight-knit group. And only a few of them now are still faithful members of the church of that group that he was really involved in. And it's a sad thing, but it's one thing, and from a distance sometimes it's even difficult. But oftentimes kids are not as grounded as we might think they are. And so they get out in the world and it's easy for them to get drawn away. Now, I believe a lot of times these same individuals, if you have the right opportunity to bring them back in and reroot them, kind of like taking something that's bad soul and putting it in good soul, I think a lot of times they'll take hold, and some of the things maybe they were taught will come back. But so these lessons that we're going to do not only work for those that have never obeyed the gospel, but they will work for those that one time were at least somewhat part of a congregation and have just kind of drifted away. So when we get to today, we're going to get to inviting or listing your 5 people to invite. And so it can be either people who have never obeyed the gospel or people that have, for whatever reasons, drifted away. Some of these lessons that I'm going to be doing, I've done, and people that may have even been baptized when they're teens, they said, I wasn't really baptized for the right reasons. And some of them said, I need to be baptized because that wasn't why I was baptized. Now, that's not the goal of this, but yet the point is it refocuses on what it means to become a Christian and to be a Christian. And so it is a good focus for even those that may have drifted away. It's a good lesson series, I think, even for those that are faithful because it reinforces what you need to know. But anyway, this is lesson, to try to accelerate things, this is lesson 2 and 3 of the video Bible series, which was titled Preparing Yourself and Devoting Yourselves to Prayer. Now, what kind of things do we need to prepare for before we even get to kind of a reverse engineer of the lesson that the person there brought? What kind of things do we need to do to prepare ourselves for teaching people the life of Christ? Huh? I heard studying, and I heard something. I pray about. Well, that's basically our 2 lessons in a nutshell. The first one deals a lot with study, and the second one deals a lot with prayer. So that is the first, the second and third lesson in a nutshell. But it goes a little bit more to that. We've got to have things ready. We want to have some type of finger food, so we'll need to make sure we have everything ready for them. So when they go, we should, especially by then, be able to. So if people, ladies or whoever, want to head over, at some point during the lesson and go and be getting the food prepared and ready so that when the time is up, we immediately go over there and begin our meal. We'll have the TV set up where it can stream live, and so you still could watch it without actually having to be in the room. And so there's a lot of things that will go in. Kind of like another thing that we need to be prepared for. One of the things when you begin a study with someone that when I took some evangelism classes, and one of the things that the number one thing that you need to make sure is whenever you start studying with someone that your baptistry is ready. It sounds basic, but that's true. You need to make sure it's ready so that, because you need to, in your mindset, be thinking that's what's the end result, because that should be your goal. And so you need to make sure the baptistry is ready. Now, a lot of times we really focus on this initial part of doing the study. But if things go the way you hope and pray they do, what happens when they come up out of the water? And that's where a lot of times we're not prepared. We just did not have it. And so really this life of Christ, what we need is we need some people that are willing to go through these books, these commentary things, and just in a very casual pace go through this entire life of Christ with them. I think this is the greatest benefit of this study, is that people that may have already received enough knowledge to know they need to be baptized, but yet they're really not really grounded yet. They are there, but they need to do more. And so I think the life of Christ will be. And so all of us, I think anyone in here, if it's a woman that's baptized, I think any lady in here has capability of going through them with this life of Christ study. Because basically what you're doing is you're using the commentary just to go through it. And I think any of the guys here, basically, if it's a guy or even a couple, are capable of doing that study with them as well. So some of our part to get prepared is, if you're not planning on being the one that does the main study, of course we're doing this thing collectively here, but you need to be ready to help teach afterwards. And we will need more and more teachers as this goes on. So anyway, in the preparing yourselves, there was proposed a question, how does James 3:1 encourage us to be prepared to teach the gospel? So let's read James 3:1. It says, "Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness." And he admits that many times people will think about this as limiting teachers. And so what is the conclusion of many from this verse? Well, that's true, but how do a lot of people use it? They use it as an excuse, and so how do they look at it? You're right, that's exactly what he's saying. Yes, I know. But how do most people look at this? Many people look at it, I'm not ready, I can't teach. I don't want to have this judgment on me, I just can't teach. And so in their mind, they're never to that point. And really, that's not what this verse is talking about. It's talking about we need to be ready and we need to be serious. It's serious when you teach someone. And so you don't go beyond your expertise on things. By the way, when you're studying with someone, it's okay to say, I don't know. That's okay. Say, we'll look into it. I'll ask somebody. We'll look around. We'll get an answer for you, but I don't know. Did you know what that comes across as? Being honest. Who knows every answer that there is? And so that is really a good, honest answer that we need to use more often sometimes. And things like, even like mechanics that work on cars. You bring them a car and they may not know exactly a thing about that car. I've known some mechanics, some of the best mechanics, they'll have a car that's a little different, and you know what they start doing almost immediately? If it's something a little different, they might open up a book or manual on that and start reading some details. And now you got so much on the internet, but they'll investigate, because no one can know sometimes every answer. So if you don't know every question they ask, and I hope this series, as you'll see how this is done, a lot of times questions can be diverted till when it's germane. So, someone especially if they know anything about the Church of Christ, what's one of the first questions they're going to talk about? Singing music, yeah. Well, it's kind of like, I tell about like my son who desperately wanted to read from the time he was little. And he gets to kindergarten and he was all frustrated after the first week. Shoulder down, head down. He was just, we said, what's wrong? And we need to stop and ask your teacher, what happened? And he said, well, y'all told me that they would teach me how to read in kindergarten. First week. And we said, well, so we talked to his teacher, and his teacher said, we're learning the alphabet right now. We got to learn how each letter sounds, how they sound together. And then we're going to learn certain key words, how they're pronounced and how to spell them. And then we'll start putting them together. And about the first year, we'll get to actually reading basic sentences. He was okay with that. He had a game plan. So I have found most people in studies, for example, if they want to talk about, singing, worship type things, Well, there's going to be a lesson for that. That's going to be basically the last lesson. And the way this format is, it's going to be the seventh lesson. So what you say is, well, we're going to get to that. We're going to study that. That's going to be in the seventh lesson. And I'll go ahead and write it down and make sure that we answer your question that night. And no one complains about that process because you can explain to them that and they will understand that. They're fine with that. Now, if you just say, nah, or what, one of the really worst things you can do a lot of times is start talking to them before you've grounded them in what the understanding is. If they don't have the premise that the Bible is the authority and the Word of God, then it becomes just your opinion, their opinion. And if you ever get in that mode, it's hard to get them out of that. So you've got to do it in a right order. And so we do. We need to be ready when we go to teach. We need to be able to correctly handle the Word of God. What's the best way you think you can get ready to, or get ready better to do personal evangelism? Study yourself, that's true. Read the Bible, yes, that's good. But there you go. Go with someone. That is a tried and true method. Even Jesus, when He sent His disciples out, how did He send them? 2 by 2. So anyway, go with someone that has experience. How many of y'all, now, I don't want to embarrass anybody, but if you have ever had a study with someone, especially if you've ever had a study with someone where it led to them being baptized, raise your hand. Okay. So, see, it's not everybody, and I knew it wouldn't be, and I'm not embarrassing people by pointing this out. What I am pointing out is we have several in this congregation that already have experience. So what you would want to do, if you want to learn, when there's a study that comes up and one of these individuals take the lead on the study, go with them. And you'll be surprised. And by the way, those of you that are the mentors in that situation, what you want to do is you want them to, maybe the first lesson just observe, but at some point you want them to start taking over. You want to gradually get them to where they can do. Now, I want to tell you something. They're not going to do everything exactly the way you do it. But some things they do will work better. Some things won't work as well. But the point is they've got to learn and grow and develop and do that themselves. So any thoughts on that? Though, by the way, the ones that have done studies, how many of y'all actually went with someone else before you ever did your own study by yourself? Okay. Look at there. See? That's just a tried and true method. So don't think you have to all of a sudden, out of the blue, be able to do it all by yourself. There are a few that can do that, but it's rare. Usually you have to have been and observed someone do it. What is the most significant foundation to teach another? Paul says we need to speak truth in love. Ephesians 4:15. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ. Speaking the truth in love. What does that mean? Speaking the truth in love. Well, you don't sugarcoat things, but what do? There you go. You teach with compassion. So you don't hold anything back, but you do it in a way that's caring. And there's ways to do that. I mean, and obviously it's pretty. You show compassion for the person. By the way, if you don't have any kind of relationship with them, that may be a little tougher to do. It's much easier to, if they know you, know a little bit about you, it's much easier to show you've got compassion for them. But one of the things I have found works really well is if you ever have a chance to go study with someone and you go there, don't just open up your Bible and begin studying. Ask them how they're doing. They've got kids, ask them how their kids are doing, how their grandkids are doing. Find out what their hobbies are, what they're into. And spend a good 5-10 minutes just talking to them and get to know them better. Let them get to know you better. And then ease into a study. Because you've got to show that you're not just looking at them as someone that you're trying to sledgehammer into believing something. That you genuinely care for them. If you find out when their birthday is, send them a card, give them a call, or maybe even take a beat. Do things like you would do someone you care about. And that's how we do that. Jesus was full of grace and truth, according to John 1:14. This is a balance we must commit to in all our Bible studies. So, grace and truth. So we must have that compassionate side, the love side. By the way, if we're not motivated by love of our fellow human and the situation that they're in about being lost, I want to tell you that's a bad motivation to begin a study at all. I won't say it can't work, but I want to tell you the motivation should be because we love them. We have compassion for their souls. We want to do what we can to show them the way. What are some essential elements we need to build on that foundation? And here we see the first one is prayer. We pray for God to enter into our preparation itself. The second, we need study. We must become familiar with Scripture. And of course, I don't know if this one goes on, but next lesson talks about praying for the study, praying for the person we're studying with. So study, you've got to put some effort into it. But I want to tell you, as I've always said, well, to show it a different way, engineering is by far the toughest undergraduate degree or major you can choose. Now, there are others that get into the graduate level that maybe even surpass it. But for undergraduate level, engineering is universally accepted by just about anyone that it's the toughest. It's so math-centered. You will have more math than math majors. You will have more science-type things, more labs than just about anyone. And it's a very difficult major. But what you'll find is, I know school I went to was a very difficult undergraduate school in engineering. I had people that entered in with me that had perfect scores on their ACTs, had valedictorians in their high schools, and they got into certain subjects, and they eventually dropped out of engineering and chose another major. Then I had one friend, she made low enough for an ACT, she had to take remedial classes when she first got to Tennessee Tech, and yet she graduated with like a 3.1 or 3.2 GPA. And the same thing on personal evangelism. A lot of times it's not about know-how, it's about want to. And so how much do you care about your fellow human that you want to make sure that they understand what the gospel is? What is a practical way we can be prepared to teach the life of Christ? One point is intentionally put some effort to it. Give yourself goals, deadlines for when you want to get through with things. We need to be intentional about looking for opportunities. Yes, and we're going to get to some of that today. Most challenging lessons you've learned, must prepare to be patient, must never give up. You never know when someone all of a sudden is going to respond to your query to study. Will respond to, maybe you thought the study ended poorly, and yet sometimes it'll surprise you. God works in hearts. Sometimes He has to work longer than others. What expectation should we have for the study? We need to prepare expectantly. And that's where also, by the way, you go on with someone that's been there, done that, it really helps you because, hopefully you won't come across anything that totally just will surprise you. And so you'll learn from that. We must be prepared to be ready for God to work and to expect people to be convicted. The gospel is still the power of God. And I think we lose focus on that this still is a very powerful tool. And we sometimes get discouraged and think that people won't listen anymore, but they will. And indeed, we just got to get to the right people. How does the parable of the sower encourage us to teach about others about the life of Christ? Sometimes the soul is productive. Sometimes it is not. The hardest thing you'll learn about personal evangelism, and maybe this is why a lot of people just don't want to get into it, you'll have that compassion for your fellow man. You'll have that love. You'll have desire. You will enter a study with the fervent of your heart. And it will seem to be going well. And then it's time for them to choose to obey the gospel or not. They'll choose not to. You'll wring your hands and you'll question and you'll think about anything you did. I did something wrong. I apparently did. What's the truth? Not everybody's going to accept it. And that's a hard fact, but that's something we need to understand. Now, there are times that someone won't accept it at that time, but maybe 1, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years I've seen, people then will maybe change their minds to respond. But sometimes people go to the deathbed and never respond to the gospel call. And so we need to understand that that is the case. But you'll never get anyone unless you get out there and go to work. Now, I have found in this study I do, it's been very successful for me. If they'll go through the entire study. You can't really compare apples to apples if they don't go through the study. But if they go through the study with me, it's been very successful. And so that's the key, finding people who are truly, genuinely interested in study. And if they are, it will work. But the main thing is God's the one who gives the increase. We need to leave it to God. We do our part. And God will reward us. And don't be discouraged unless you do. In your experience studying the gospel with others, have you seen lives change? Studying with someone is definitely a life-changing event. This is an opportunity to change their lives for eternity. You have a final word of encouragement for all Christians. Unless we prepared to fail. Prepared involves a willing heart. Now, I want to tell you, you need to always be ready because you never know when a study can come. One of the reasons I have such fond feelings for lock-ins, even though they do require a lot of physical effort and a lot of lack of sleep. I guess it was about 2012. We had a lock-in in Tallapoosa, Georgia. And lo and behold, about 1 a.m., one of the girls who was a member there, she said, I have a friend and she has a lot of questions. I said, what kind of questions? Well, it's about the church and about the Bible. I said, well, tell her to come back here. I said, well, you stay here too. And we got another kid back there. And so we opened up our Bibles and I began the study I used. Didn't know how it'd go. I said, well, it's time. There was other people working with kids, and so I just started studying in my office. And it went through, and about 5 a.m., this girl decided she was wanting to be baptized, so she was baptized. I asked Erin later, the girl that was part of the class, I said, well, what did you think of that? And her words was interesting. She said it was intense. What do you think she said it was intense? Now, this is teenager speaking. But why do you think she said it was intense? What do you think took place during that at some point in time? It was emotional. If someone generally is convicted, they usually become emotional at some point. And that point where they become that emotional and realize that they're lost, it is intense. And if you get to that point, that's a good point because that means they're right there. That they are there. And indeed, she wanted to be baptized. We said, well, you want to call your mom? She said, yes, she called her. And then her mom was already heading to work or something, had an early shift. We said, do you want it for your mom? She said, no. She said, go ahead. I said, I'm going ahead. I said, okay. So we did. We went ahead and baptized. So it is life-changing. If you have the opportunity, I know the Libbies are about ready to go over the big pond and do some work. It's exciting. But that same excitement can happen here. I think sometimes we think, well, it no longer take place here, but it can. And it is emotional every time that person gets to that point. What did Acts 2:38, what in Acts 2:37, what did it say about the people there? Cut to the heart. It was emotional. I imagine there were some tears involved. And so it will be an emotional time. 1 Timothy 4:16 says, keep a close watch on yourself and on the teaching. Persist in this, for by so doing you will save both yourselves and your hearers. So let me ask you something. I thought that elders were the only ones supposed to keep a close watch on the teaching. I think sometimes Christians, we grow lazy because we like, well, that's up to the preacher. That's up to the elders to ensure that teaching is right. But here we're told that we're to keep a close watch in what we teach. And we can save both yourself and your hearers. We went into then, and by the way, the questions on the first one is, list the characteristics of a teacher's heart. Once again, some of you had someone that taught you. We're not going to, I've got to get to this next one. It says, write a prayer in your notebook about preparing your heart into being a teacher. And then they suggested that it's not bad to memorize 1 Timothy 4:16. If you want to do that, more power to you. I have found that as we get older, it's a lot tougher to memorize things. And so it's probably more important just to know what that verse says and where it's at. So that's what I would really say, make sure you know is what this verse talks about and where it's found. And then we get into a lesson, and it's interesting. I'm just going to give my impression of this lesson that was done. It was taught by a missionary. I forget where he was a missionary at. Maybe some of y'all remember. But in this lesson, I thought it had some of the greatest points, and it had some of the points I'm like, eh. But anyway, it's from a perspective of a full-time missionary. And so what we need to understand is what even works in Ghana won't necessarily work here. But on the flip side, what works here won't necessarily work in Ghana either. So each location has its own little things that you've got to figure out. If we ever figure out that key, that's when you have a lot of success. But every location has their own little differences. Is prayer essential in the work? Well, yes. Prayer is just essential as Bible study. I believe that. And we need to pray. In fact, what we need to be doing now, we're going to set up a list of 5. You need to be praying about that list. Praying about those people. You need to be praying that they'll come. If they do come that first lesson, you need to be praying that they'll stay for all the lessons. You need to be praying that they'll keep an open heart. They'll be converted. And if they are, you need to continue to pray for those people. And so prayer is very important. And so we ask God to do His part, change people. You know, sometimes it's just creating opportunities. There's so much that could go wrong in doing a study with someone. First of all, you know, we're doing this on a weekly basis. A person could have a flat tire on the way and miss the class. Something could go wrong with the person's. So there are so many things that we really hope the providence of God helps us in these studies. He was big on memorizing verses and doing prayers that way. You know, once again, I think sometimes we get older, it gets harder to memorize things, and it's more important to maybe know the gist of the verse and pray from your heart. So I would say if you can memorize verse and include it in your prayer, that's great, but just make sure it's what your heart is trying to reveal as well. So anyway, he goes through that. I'm going to go ahead and flip through some of this because we've got to get to okay. Oh, I didn't do the question. Okay. So the second assignment. This is the one that I wanted to get to. It says, set aside some time each day to pray about leading others to Christ. What does praying about something like that say to God? Huh? You care. Yes. So, how many of y'all pray for your kids? Pray for your grandkids? If something's hard coming up with their lives or something they've done well, how many of y'all pray for that? And you do. Because what? It's important to you, is it not? And so if we want to show God that this is important to us, we need to pray. By the way, if you want to show God that you are concerned about the church, you need to regularly pray for the church. Here's the one, and I want us to do this. It says, make a list of 5 people with whom you'd like to share the life of Christ. Now, this is, I'm going to modify this to first, we're going to invite them to this May 22nd, be the first time. So, this only works if you do it. If we get 5 people, everyone here, we'll have over 100 that night. So, list 5 people. So, you'll say, well, I need to look at someone else's list because they may have some people I'd have. That's okay. Do you know how effective that is if two different people ask the same person to come? So that's okay if that happens. But 5 people that you have a connection to, that they know you, that they have some good feeling of you, write them down. I'm going to tell you to do this too. Write down about 7. Surely you put 7 names. Why did I say that? Because the odds are at least 1 or 2 or 3 you're going to say, I can't. So write down more than that. And if someone is even iffy, really try to work with them that they'll come. So I'm going to give you some time just to do that. Write down 5 names. So as you think of your 5 names and write your 5 names down, the last part says, in your time of prayer, mention specific requests for each of these people. These are people that we want here. And once again, they don't have to necessarily be people that have never become Christian, have never been baptized. These could be people that have fallen away. And I would suspect that most of you will have a mix of names, and that's fine. That's good. And once again, some of you may duplicate names. That's okay too. But get a hold of them the way you, especially if it's someone that's close enough to you, get a hold of them the way you normally get a hold of them. If you see them regularly, ask them in person. If you talk to them on the phone regularly, ask them on the phone. If you communicate through text or Facebook or something, ask them that way. Whatever you normally communicate with them, invite them to be here. Be sure to point out that there's going to be a meal afterwards and everything. But and I would say if someone has an issue with, they have young children, make sure that's not going to be an issue with them. We can make sure that someone will be here to help out with their kids if that becomes an issue. Okay? Any questions or comments about that? Now, the way this works, Paul talked about that he watered or he planted and Paul's watered, or anyway. But God gave the increase. From my experience, most of the baptisms that I have seen where I've had a hand in the study, a lot of times was someone else that led them to it. Even the girl, the precious teenager that I mentioned, it was her friend that brought her to me. She had questions. Aaron wasn't prepared or ready to answer questions, but she knew I could, and so she brought her to me. And the rest happened as it was. You may not have the ability to study with someone. You may never have the ability to study effectively with someone. But you have people that trust you. You have people that know you. You have people that depend on you. People that look up to you, that you can just get here. And once they're here, they'll at least hear something that could lead them to salvation. I hope this has been meaningful, but these will only be meaningful to the point of how much you put into it. To draw a parallel, the Libby's, how much planning has went into y'all going to Ghana? 8 months. How much planning is on the Ghana side being ready for y'all to be there? 8 months. There's a lot of work, and I realize they're doing a little bit more of a campaign, but yet you see the connection. We want a lot of results for a little bit of work. Truth of the matter, way it has always worked is there's a lot of work, and we get a little bit of results, but they're great results. And they're more than worth it. I know this message probably has not been the most or thought-provoking as far as salvation, but yet I would hope it is, because how will you lead someone to Christ if you're not right with God yourself? It makes a difference. If you're not a Christian tonight, why not become one? I'm not aware of anyone, but there may be. It's the most important thing you could ever do. Paul was told there's urgency. Why are you waiting? Rise and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on the Lord. Maybe you're here and maybe you have done something of public nature you need to make right. And I want to tell you, I would urge you to make that right now before you walk out the doors. But it will then help you be able to have a greater influence on those you may try to lead to Christ. Or maybe you just need prayers for the congregation. Whatever the need, come now, let's go to stands.
Calling today, calling today. Why from the sunshine of love will thou roll, farther and farther away? Calling today, calling today. Jesus is calling, is tenderly calling today. Jesus is calling the weary to rest, calling today, calling today. Bring him thy burden and thou shalt be blessed. He will not turn thee away. Calling today, calling today. Jesus is calling, is tenderly calling today. Jesus is pleading, oh, listen to his voice. Hear him today, hear him today. They who believe on his name shall rejoice. Quickly arise and awake. Calling today, calling today. Jesus is calling, is gently calling today. Pray with me, please. Father, Heavenly Father, this day, our food we've had in our field of worship, in your word, and I pray that we can take our things back to this time. It's good to come from it. Serve the grace and love and prayer. Father, we need to work in the church. God is making everything different. And God is for those who are sick. We will be healing and restoring lives to be with. Thank you. Thank you for your Son, Jesus. Thank you for the Spirit. Set your example for those who are around us.